So now that we've covered the clear soups, we're going to get into video 3. And so for video 3, now we're going to talk about the thick soups. So thick soups have 2 types of thick soups, cream and puree. And they're alike in some ways and they're different in some ways. So both cream and pureed soups contain some form, some main ingredient that is pureed. So that a lot of times is potatoes is really common, and so you're going to have some kind of vegetable that's going to be pureed in both of them. The difference is cream soup is always going to contain a dairy. A puree soup may or may not contain dairy. So they could, both varieties contain dairy. A cream soup will always contain a dairy. The big difference is between these 2 soups is how they are thickened and what makes them a thick soup. A cream soup is going to be thickened with a roux. Roux, this word here, R-O-U-X. A roux is a combination of fat and flour. And you can use pretty much any type of fat or oil to make a roux, but usually all-purpose flour is the most common. A lot of other flours don't have very good thickening qualities. So all-purpose, regular wheat flour is what's used to make that roux. And so you can make that with butter, you can make it with vegetable oil, bacon grease, coconut oil. There's all types of different ways that you can make the roux. We'll talk quite a bit more about roux and actually have a whole separate lesson just on roux and thickening in our sauces portion of this unit. So the cream soup is, because of the roux and because of that thickening agent, is going to be very smooth and velvety. It's going to have a very velvety mouth feel. The pureed soup is going to be a little thicker and it's going to, a little coarser. And so it doesn't feel so as smooth in your mouth and on your tongue. Both of these soups, you never ever want to boil them. When you boil them, then the fat can break down and it causes what's called curdling. And curdling is essentially when your oils and your other liquids separate, and it can look very chunky and kind of grainy and oily. It looks oily. It doesn't look smooth and nice the way it should. So curdling, let's see, I kind of tried to find a picture here, like up close of what it looks like, but essentially it looks like you can see kind of the milk or cream and the oil, and you, in a normal, if you've done the soup correctly, you shouldn't be able to see the oil. So a couple of tips to help prevent the curdling. When you go to add milk or cream to soup, you don't ever want to add cold. You always want to make sure that is room temperature or warm, and you can just warm it in the microwave. You also don't want to add the milk or the cream really far in advance. You add it generally just before service. And most importantly, do not boil. Boiling is the most common mistake that is made to cause the curdling. And you can finish the cream soup with a bechamel or cream sauce. In the next portion of our unit, we will talk about sauces. And so we'll talk a little bit more about those type of sauces. So some examples of the cream soup examples here would be like a cream of tomato, cream of mushroom is really common, cream of asparagus, cream of chicken is also there. Butternut squash soup, that's down here. It has this really bright and very lovely color. Creamy chicken and rice is really common. Broccoli cheese soup, I think most students that I have at least are familiar with the broccoli cheese soup or broccoli cheddar soup, and that's going to be a cream soup. Puree soups, they do not involve a roux as a thickener, and so they have the starch or ingredient item is the thickener. And so potato soup, tomato soup, vegetable soup, these are all examples of puree soups. And potato soup is really interesting because you can make potato soup as a cream soup, and you can also make it as a puree. Like you can do, I've actually done it both ways, and I personally prefer it as the puree soup. Myself, I like that option better, and allowing the starch of the potatoes to act as my thickening agent. But you definitely can do it the other way. There's a restaurant, I think O'Charlie's potato soup is like a cream soup. Like it's not a puree. Like there's chunks of potatoes and the liquid is definitely thickened with a roux. It's kind of almost more like a sauce than like a soup. So you also, in the thick soup, you have the category of bisque. And so a bisque is a seafood cream soup, if you see that term. So it is a type of cream soup, but it also contains pureed shells from shellfish. So you have to really watch shellfish allergies on that one, making sure that there's no cross contact as well. Like if you had a tomato bisque and regular tomato soup, you couldn't use that ladle in each. You'd have to be very careful. The bisque is going to have a little grainy texture, and it's generally going to be pale pink or red in color and have the flavor of that shellfish. Chowders are also a type of thick soups. So chowders are hearty and they're thick. They're made the same way as a cream soup, except they're generally not pureed before the cream or the milk is added. They're thickened generally with a roux, large pieces of the big main ingredient like potatoes or seafood clams. Clam chowder is really common. Corn chowder is really, really common too. And then you would garnish it. So some examples here of the bisques and the chowders. We have lobster bisque and tomato bisque are the two most common. Clam chowder and corn chowder are the most common on the chowders as well. Super easy to make the chowders, definitely.